Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 COVID quarantine edition of the Emeritus Chronicles launch. It's been a long year. The year's still going. If COVID was dog years, it just seems to be dragging and stretching. But I appreciate that all of you are not only fantastic members of our Emeritus community, but you're also productive members of the community in writing, taking classes, and wonderfully here to share that experience with us today. We are, of course, recording the event. We'll be sharing the recording on our website, which you obviously found because you got to the link. We'll share that on the website so you can always pass it on to family, friends, and others. And of course, that website also has the purchase link for the Emeritus Chronicles as well. But I appreciate all of you being here, and I really would love to introduce and welcome our three faculty members as co-hosts, Monona Wally, Rob Fox, and Anna Reyes. Yay! Yay! Welcome, team. And I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Monona to guide us through the event. Welcome, Monona, and thank you so much for doing this quarantine edition this year.
I love that quarantine edition. Thank you, Scott, so much always for your support of our work here. I'm here as the editor of the Chronicles, and I teach the writing for publication class where the students are really do the hard work of reading all the pieces, selecting them for publication, proofreading, editing. So it's just always such a good feeling when we can launch the journal, because a lot of hard work on your part as writers who have contributed, and as the writing for publication students who have worked on it. This is the 30th volume of Chronicles this year, which is amazing. It contains the work of the writing for publication class, Rob Fox's class, and Anna Reyes' classes. And it's impressive because there's such a diversity of stories and poems. There's memoir, there's fiction, and there's poetry. What I really love about Chronicles is that each story in the journal offers this really very singular voice and a singular point of view. It's kind of like you're not in this hot air balloon looking down at all these different landscapes and you're saying, wait, I want to land, I want to stay there a little longer. But you get all these wonderful gems of stories and poems. And one thing that makes this issue special, as Scott mentioned, is that the stories have largely been written, during this time of coronavirus, and the issue was published during COVID, and that sense of isolation that this brought on. And I think what it confirms, the fact that we're here today, is that storytelling connects us in this really deep and profound way. And that's why it just, this feels really special to be launching it this year. I think all the stories are about how we connect with each other, how we try and connect with each other. And so that's just so meaningful. It's taken on even more meaning than it always has. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. I also want to thank the SMC printing office that always does a beautiful job. And actually, I want to just share the cover of the journal so you can all see it. Give me 1 second here. So this is just some beautiful artwork from one of Catherine Tur's classes, Francine Lucy's artwork. And And 39 students have contributed to this year's journal, which is, it's just so fantastic to have so many writers included. Of course, I also want to thank Anna and Rob for their work with all the students and my students in the Writing for Publication class, I'd like to thank. And most of all, to all of you writers who have your work here. And I'm just so excited for you to see it. As Scott mentioned, you can order it from the SMC website, the same link that was up for to get to this has the link to purchase the journal. And it might take a while to get to you, just want to say that, but be patient. And I think it'll be well worth the effort. All right, well, let's get started. We have 12 wonderful readers tonight. I wish we could have all 39, but we'd be going into the wee hours of the morning. But we have 12 who are just representative of a lot of really, really wonderful work here. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob Fox to introduce his readers.
Thank you so much. And such beautiful words about such a beautiful publication. Thank you for all of your hard work, Monona. We all really, really appreciate it. So this evening, we're going to hear from 3 of the writers from the Saturday morning class, autobiography class. And our first reader is Ruth Bornstein. And nature, birds, plants, trees, the sun, and the seasons are what dominate Ruth Bornstein's writing. Ruth writes in a manner not quite prose, not quite poetry, but all of her work is encased in beautiful language, evoking images and meditative messages. Ruth's work occupies that very special place where magic occurs, somewhere between the earth and the moon. Please welcome Ruth. And Ruth, I'm going to bring up your piece. And 3, 2, 1. Here you go. Whenever you're ready to take it away, Ruth. Yeah, you're on mute right now, Ruth. If you just look for that little, there you go.
First of all, I have to say that I discovered picture books with my children. I never had any picture books of my own. Now, Goodnight Moon was a staple on our coffee table. In 1970, when I was 44 years old and my youngest child was going on 12, I started to do strange, funny little drawings, one after the other. Rabbits peeking out of holes in the ground, little green elephants talking to flowers, flowers flying away. And sometimes I made notes around the edges. I didn't know what was happening, but I was having fun, and as usual in my work, I let it happen. Then in 1971, I grew my first vegetable garden. My son Adam and I dug and prepared the soil, put in manure and brought in bales of hay for mulch. I planted and the garden grew.
Hello?
I've tried 9 ways this Sunday. I can't get in.
Oh, I'm in.
Should I continue?
You could please continue.
Okay. And the garden grew like a wild green jungle. It was like a celebration was going on. Everything growing, putting out flowers, whispering among themselves, holding on to each other. I spent more time in the garden holding hands with the cucumber vines than I did in my studio. I even wondered if maybe a little green elephant was hiding under the leaves. In November, the plants began to die, sinking and fading into the ground, but still putting out flowers, still trying to grow. I felt that I had witnessed the whole cycle of life in one summer, and that I had had a hand in it, that I'd even helped grow the huge red and green horned tomato worm that made me scream when I reached into the vines to pick a tomato. Then one day, while sitting on my second-story deck, I reached up and found words. It was as if they had always been there, and now that I was ready, I could pull them down. Words like seed and green and grow felt as real to me as paint. I couldn't stop writing, kept a notebook under my pillow, barely slept. I knew that what was coming out of me was from the same source as my painting, that it must be part of the thread I was always searching for. My ideas centered around themes that have always been important to me: to be aware of the drama of the day unfolding, that we're all connected to and are part of the natural world around us. Little green elephant became a character in a sketchbook. A rabbit came out of the ground and wandered the woods the way I like to wander. I've always loved gorillas. My 3 tumbling around boys reminded me of little gorillas, so it was natural that a little gorilla appeared. I filled up sketchbook after sketchbook with words and pictures. Wishes, fantasies, feelings poured out of me in a way that I couldn't say with paint alone. I was lucky. To make a longer story short, in 1973, a sketchbook I titled Indian Bunny became my first published book. New and surprising changes in my work and in my life have happened ever since. So, dear children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, anybody's children, one of the things I want to leave with you is a reminder to follow your instincts, to persevere, to allow the mystery. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Our next reader is going to be Wendon Davis. Wendon Davis comes from a large family, and through his writings, we see life lessons in his relationships with all of his 11 siblings. His writing style is the opposite of something one would expect in someone coming from such a large family, where getting just a bowl of cereal in the morning must be a hectic struggle filled with elbows and competition. Wendon's writing is of the South, thoughtful and calm, moving at a measured pace of a quiet river on a hot summer afternoon. Please welcome Wendon Davis. Okay, Wendon, anytime you're ready.
All right, thank you, Rob. My piece is about be good to yourself. Walls of photographs covered in ash. Have you seen so-and-so? This haunting dream reminds me of 9/11. Thousands were taken in moments. Now, the coronavirus death toll mounts daily, slow moving, numbers climbing. It has me thinking of some very painful and personal memories of death. In 1952, I was 12 and in the 7th grade in Newport News, Virginia. Each morning, I'd walk with Edward, my 2-year-older brother, and my sister, who was 1 year old, Murray, who would drop me off in my school on the way to their high school. Of course, I wanted to know all about their classes and how they would be different from mine. Since Edward and Murray were also my best friends, their opinions were gold. In turn, because their classes and after-school activities were more demanding, they had transferred their babysitting activities to me. With 10 siblings from 1 to 11 years younger, Mom needed help. I felt proud on these walks that Edward and Murray had come to treat me as a peer, asking about each kid and offering suggestions. But when I entered the classroom that morning, my happiness was immediately replaced by fear. All my mates were sitting silently, hands folded, while our teacher, the school principal, and other adults were whispering in front. Mrs. Manley cleared her voice. I have something very difficult for me to tell you. She hesitated and took a deep breath. Her voice shook. Oscar Smith died last night of a brain aneurysm. Then she and the principal introduced the strangers, who turned out to be counselors in case we wanted to talk with someone. Oscar Smith, he can't be dead, I thought. Sitting still with my hands still clasped, watching Miss Manley hug many crying girls. Oscar Smith is my point guard. He's only a couple of inches shorter than me, but he dribbles the ball like he's Marcus Haynes and moves all slinky-like, always passing it to the right guy. Oscar lives only a couple of doors down and walks to school with me and Murr and Edward. Oh no, that's why he wasn't out front this morning. I think I was frozen in my chair, numb, unable to move or comprehend what was happening around me, though my eyes held water. I couldn't be, it couldn't be. I felt trapped by memories that screamed he was still alive. This was my first experience with death. Naturally, that afternoon, I went to Edward. What is death? I asked. As far as I can understand, he replied, death is a natural order of life. No one escapes death. No one, not even Edward? At 12, I had no idea what he was talking about. Clearly, more wisdom about death comes with age. So I forced him into a pact. Whoever died first would leave the others some sign that the dead could see and love the living. Edward thought I was crazy, but we shook on it. Unfortunately, I think he fulfilled the promise. But to give his early death content, first, a bit about Edward's life. As the oldest child, Edward was like a saint. Into his 60s, he cared for everyone in the family, offering solace, affection, and often financial support, especially after my father died. He became the family's fountain of common sense. When he was drafted to Vietnam, Edward became a combat medic. One day, he headed to a foxhole to help a wounded soldier. On the way, his head caught, on the way, his head caught shrapnel, I'm sorry. It ended his military career and he was heliported, then airlifted back to the US to have a plate put in his skull. Though his speech was affected after a long convalescence and physical therapy, he transferred his skills to become a VA emergency room technician. Despite service connection for his injury, he worked full-time through to retirement. It was shortly after my father died, and Edward, who never did get married, moved in, caring for the home, and eventually my mother as she slipped into dementia. He was 68 when our youngest siblings, now in their 40s, encouraged him to join them on a cruise, saying he deserved a break. Although they were aware of his many illnesses, they encouraged him to drink. Upon his return, he felt ill and was hospitalized with a heart attack. I rushed back to Virginia from Los Angeles, where I now live. Over the next 3 days, we talked endlessly while he dealt with constant hiccups. Many medications were tried. Finally, he seemed to be getting stronger and started to exert his paternal role again. He wanted Mom moved to Murray's house in case anything happened to him, because Mom and Murray were the closest. "I'll see you in the morning," were his last words. The next day, I arrived to a room filled with gowns, masks, beeping instruments. But by the time I could enter the room, all that was left was a smile. But it was Edward's smile. He had done it. He had found a way to fulfill our crazy pact. He reached past death to show me he would always look out after me. And in all my pain, the memory of his grin still brings me peace. But I have been blessed with other wise life coaches whose words are relevant to this pandemic. As a drug and alcohol counselor, I inherited a sobriety group from a counselor who was retired. Don't ask me why that therapist allowed a man named Joe to remain, since he continuously drank a fifth of vodka daily, but calling himself a social drinker. Maybe it was because Joe was funny, talkative, and generally a nice guy. I insisted he had to be abstinent in the program, and he left. I didn't see Joe for a month. Then he called for an appointment and came in drunk. I sent him home and told him to get serious. The next time he called, he asked for help, and I suggested our inpatient program. To my surprise, he completed it. Unfortunately, Joe, who was a muscular baggage handler at LAX, was struck by a fast-moving cancer. On his deathbed, he called me from the VA nursing home to come visit him. He seemed to have lost half his weight, only had wisps of hair and a jaundiced complexion. But Joe held my hand tight as he whispered to me, "Thank you for pushing me and sticking by me through all the ups and downs. Be good to yourself, my friend. Life is long and life is short. That is all." And with this, he fell asleep. That night, he died. Today, I tell everyone, be good to yourself. I'm known for this phrase. And as I think about all the lives lost these last 2 months, I keep recalling his wisdom. What am I doing with myself today? Am I being good to myself and others? One thing I know, life is long and life is short. That is all. That is all.
That's terrific. Thank you. Thank you so much, Wyndon. All right. And finally, from our group, we have Pat Young. Whenever I hear Pat Young read, I am reminded of the 70s expression, "You've come a long way, baby." Pat writes of moments in our life where awakenings happened and directions were changed. Pat's work always has a vibrant energy and reminds us of how important it is to follow our own path. Willie the Sheikh, the great English playwright, would describe Pat in one phrase he used from Hamlet: "This above all, to thine own self be true." Please welcome Pat Young. Hey, Pat, anytime you are ready, you can take it away.
This is called Time Out. The tiny clock shop has been a neighborhood fixture on Montana Avenue for as long as anyone can remember. The open door is welcoming, drawing customers in to be warmly greeted by the owner, John, who's always delighted to see you. Home away from home. It's amazing, really. I mean, who thinks about clocks? A lot of people must, because there's always a line of customers. On a beautiful Southern California morning, I stop in to get my husband's watch repaired. Although it's early, I am fifth in line, savoring the scent of aged wood and the sounds of peaceful ticking. My eyes wander around the familiar room, clocks everywhere. Red, green, yellow, blue, cat clocks, with rolling eyes and wagging tails never stop moving. Walls are chock-a-block with clocks of every size and description, antiques, mid-century, a few new, but mostly old, sad-faced, forgotten by their owners. I've seen the same ones hanging there sorrowfully for years. How awful for them, listening to each other tick away. Never anything new to say. But wait a minute, I have an idea. My, I murmur softly to myself. I can't take my eyes off a tall, handsome grandfather clock. All beveled glass sides and mahogany surrounds, right next to me. I can feel his closeness and have an overwhelming urge to turn the little key in the front panel and step inside. It's empty, you see, without a pendulum, without chimes. How sad and lonely he must feel. Even his broken peers have their equipment. It's like being toothless in a dentist's office. He's so handsome and so alone. I quickly scan the line. No one else has noticed him. This little old lady is falling in love with him, bare-ass naked as he is. I don't care if he's missing all his shiny brass fittings, except for the small key in the front panel winking at me. I'm propelled by an uncontrollable urge. I'm going to do this. The cat clocks can't take their eyes off me. They can sense that I'm up to something big, life-changing for me and for Grandpa. After all, just because I've never been a grandmother doesn't mean I don't appreciate a handsome grandfather when I see one. Meow, the cat clocks murmur to each other. By God, she's going to do it. With exquisite nonchalance, I turn the little key, swing open the front panel, step inside, and silently close the door. Look, I'm in, I've done it, I chuckle to myself. The man who is standing behind me is so startled he can't move or speak. He wants to look away, but can't take his eyes off me. He looks around for company, but no one else has noticed. Giddy with delight, it feels like it's holding me. What would my family think? For this, they put me away for sure. They don't have to know if I'm careful. I stand perfectly still, arms at sides, eyes front. No one notices, and the man is totally spooked, unable to move. Doesn't know what to do or where to look. This is wonderful. I lost my place. I fight the urge to laugh as I turn my eyes to him and make a face, instantly resuming a statue-like stance. Don't move a muscle, don't blink. The man has jumped to the alarm of those behind him, who think he must be having a fit. I love this. I feel the joy of childhood once again. No inhibitions, freedom, endless possibilities. Next time I'll bring a book and read until someone opens the door to ask, what are you doing in here? I'll sweetly say, oh, this is my private library time. Check up front and make your reservation for an hour from now. On another day, hold cell phone to ear. Wait till someone's looking. Slam phone against the door. Exit in a huff. This phone's broken. Try the next booth. When the man, visibly agitated, looks away for a moment, I step out and resume my place in the line as if nothing has occurred. I hear the man ask the woman standing behind him, did you see that woman in front of me get in the grandfather clock? Did you see her make a face at me? She appears frightened of him, doesn't speak, but signals no, just by her turning her head side to side and stepping back away from him. The line moves forward. It's my turn, and John greets me warmly. How have you been? How's your husband? His watch must need a battery again, right? It's been exactly a year. He snaps the watch open to show me. See here, I mark the date I install each new battery. You can wait, this will only take a minute. The transaction is completed. As I turn to leave, the man behind me walks up to John and whispers, did you see that woman? Did you see her get in that clock? Totally rattled, he continues, did you see her making faces at me? John looks at him warily from his safe position behind the counter. Taking another step back, he soothingly queries, what can I do for you, my friend? I smile at the line remaining, knowing I'll be back. I'm already thinking of other things to do with that old grandfather.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you. All right.
Oh, thank you so much, Rob. Thank you so much, Pat, for that delightful story. Wendon and Ruth, you got us off to a great start here. So now we're going to hear from a couple students from my class. First up is Perry Chasen. Perry has been in the class for about 3 semesters, and she's such a great asset to the class. She's a professor of English and composition at Otis, but she had a long career as a journalist, and I think you'll see in her writing this wonderful sort of journalist eye for detail and description. She's going to be reading a short story tonight. She has told me many times she has no interest in writing memoir, which is totally fine, but I'm very happy she's going to be sharing one of her short stories here tonight. So I'm going to put that up.
Thank you, Monona. The piece I'm reading is Hallowed Ground. Shutting her eyes tight to block the sunlight that September morning failed to stop the pulsating brute inside her head. The large blue vein along her temple throbbed like an out-of-control motor as the blood rhythmically pounded inside her brain. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Coming here is always difficult, her dreaded annual Hajj. Grabbing hold of the cold, smooth stone with an open bare hand, she steadied herself, chest heaving. Uniform deep breaths, she told herself. Om, she repeated over and over, until becalmed at last, her breathing was normal. Her eyes now open, she turned to see it alongside the south pool. Julia fixed her gaze on the tree, its verdant dark green leaves abutting the small, hard, inedible hanging fruit. Discovered at ground zero with snapped roots, its branches burned. It was removed from the rubble and placed in the care of the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation before being returned to this site. The Callery Pear Tree, a living tribute of survival and hope. The Survivor Tree, now protected by a molded circular steel guardrail. Her resolve regained, she slowly straightened her body. Then, step by deliberate step, Julia inched towards the recessed pool. Catty-corner from its north twin, these two deep black granite pools reflected absence. Placing both hands on the wall of the south pool, sunlight splaying on the waterfall drew her eyes down into the infinite darkness and mollified her. A deep sadness soon replaced the calm. His name would be there, engraved into the wall. A slight murmur throughout the crowded plaza settled her. She inhaled deeply as she ran her fingers moving slowly over each of the raised letters, and as if reading Braille, she whispered, FIRSTRESPONDERS. Looking to her left, she found a seat among strangers with whom she shared so much. Sitting there, she remembered what began as an ordinary Tuesday morning, ended the moment the battalion chief issued a recall to all off-duty personnel. Knowing it was no ordinary call, he moved with greater than usual sense of urgency. Before rushing out, instead of a brief kiss goodbye, he stopped, turned, cupped her face in both his hands, and stared lovingly into her eyes. His expression had communicated everything. Yet 2 decades later, she hasn't forgiven herself for words that weren't uttered. Sitting there, inside her head, she heard the screams and smelled the toxic odor of naphtha kerosene smoke as visions of him on that day overwhelmed her. What felt like millions of fluttering butterflies rose from her stomach to her throat, flapping their wings, and she feared if she opened her mouth, they would take flight. The crowd, now silent, the reading of the names, slowly, deliberately, brought her back to this moment. She had hoped against hope this year would be different, but as the names continued, panic set in. Being here made it real yet again. She prayed, please, please don't say his name. Then, like a death knell, she heard them read his name. Reaching into her pocket, she wrapped her right hand around the gilt, light blue enameled, 5-pointed upside-down star, surrounded by a laurel wreath, one of 442 9/11 Hero Medals of Valor presented to families like hers. As the readings of the names continued, Julia, eyes downcast, clutched even more tightly on his decoration, a medal never intended to be worn.
Thank you so much, Perry. That's such a moving story. Thank you. So next up, we have Mary Greenrose, and she's also been in our class for 3 semesters. She's a dedicated memoirist, and one of the things I love so much about Mary is she brings this real spiritual side to our class. She has, had a hard childhood, but she keeps this really uplifted spirit in her stories, and also just beautiful connection with nature and moments. And she was a backup singer for many years, and tonight's story is about that. So let me put your story up.
So walking to backstage, it's a tribute to Mac Davis. I pull into the large back parking lot of the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas and carefully check to make sure I have everything I need for work: makeup, hairbrush and spray, money for a cup of coffee, and confidence my voice is in good shape. I exit the car and walk across the lot to the back entrance of the hotel, see the giant billboard that announces Mac Davis as the headliner in the main showroom, along with the temperature, 104 degrees. It is 6:30 p.m. I enter the building where the temperature drops drastically to a cool 70 degrees and begin my nightly walk to the dressing room. As I walk through the gaudy, red carpeted hallway, I see that there is a lion in a cage on the floor with people staring at him. I look at him, the mighty symbol of the hotel, a proud and beautiful animal on display for all the tourists to gawk at, and I wonder what he could be thinking. He seems passive, but in an unnatural way, like he's given up, defeated by the cage and human curiosity, no way to escape. I lock eyes with him briefly. His mighty head and mane, which should be beautiful and full, not matted and dullish like the one he possessed, are the only remnants of his true place as king in nature. I feel sad and hurry past, knowing there is nothing I can do. And also so I can pretend that I don't feel as badly as I do for this disrespect of his true majesty. As I reach the top of the ramp, I pause to survey the large sea of loud rambling people meandering over the floor of the casino as they drink, chat, and randomly stop to check the game tables. I pause at the top for a minute, calculating my path through the disorganized throngs of meandering, dressed up, gambling, drinking people. Fixing my gaze on the entrance to the backstage door, I take a deep, controlled breath and make a beeline through the sea of bodies to the other side of the room. I open the door and exhale completely, now that I am safely on the other side of the din and chaos of the casino. I deposit my bags in the ladies' dressing room, plug in my hot rollers at my spot on the long counter in front of the mirrors, organize my stage makeup, and chat a bit with whoever is there. After catching up on a little gossip, attending to our hair and makeup, putting on our show clothes, the other singers and I start a spontaneous vocal warm-up. Then somebody's tape deck starts blasting Last Dance by Donna Summer. We sing and dance along, getting pumped for the show until the stage manager calls 15 minutes. We double check that everyone's hooks are hooked and zippers zipped and traipse into Mac's dressing room. We listen through the speakers in the room for the line from the comedian, the opening act, that indicates his act is almost over, wrap up our conversations, and wait for our 5 minutes cue from the stage manager, head up the stairs to the stage, taking our places on the risers behind the orchestra to begin the show. It's time. We singers stand on top of a riser behind the band and orchestra and make last-minute adjustments to our microphones, settling into what we are about to do and wait for the downbeat. The anticipatory energy from every person on the stage is electric. The band is ready, the orchestra is ready, and the singers are ready. As Mac takes his place at the top of the stairs, which he will descend, the conductor, Ray, lifts his baton. The string section raise their instruments under their chins with bows lightly resting just above their strings. The brass and woodwind sections raise their instruments to their lips, and as Ray counts off the tempo, gives the downbeat, the electricity of the drum fill, along with the first chord of a full orchestra, rock band, and singers, explodes into I Believe in Music as the curtains rise to a screaming audience, kicking off another night of magic. Every show is a rush, twice a night for 2 full weeks at a time. A large part of what made this job so enjoyable was Mac. He had a fun sense of humor, a little sarcastic, but not unkind. And he was a performer, so listening to one of his jokes or funny comments was a storytelling event. He spoke with a Texas drawl, a country dude through and through. He included us who worked with him as family and cared about all of us. He's been known to help out a band member or two when they'd need some medical procedure they couldn't afford by paying the doctor's bills. He had a great sense of humor, and sometimes during a performance, when he got a heckler in the audience who just wouldn't quit, he would shout out in his most Texan of Texan accents, "I thought I told you to stay in the truck." It got a laugh from the audience every time, and they ended the heckling. He wore his fame well. Although he had a healthy ego, he didn't change into a self-centered jerk as many others did who wore similar shoes. I worked steadily as a backup singer-dancer for 15 years, but the 5 or so I spent working with Mac were some of the most personally fulfilling of my life. It was with this gig that I worked through many personal issues and grew to the point where so much of the wrong that happened in my childhood started to heal. The opportunity to make a living doing something that gave me great satisfaction, be enveloped by the love and acceptance that I felt from the extraordinary people I worked with, and the ability to use my talent made these years some of the most transformative of my life. I attribute to the success of this particular life experience to Mac Davis, incredible songwriter, wonderful entertainer, and a sincere and caring man. May he rest in love and peace. January 21st, 1942 to September 29th, 2020.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was just so beautiful. I love that story. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Anna to introduce her writers and take it away, Anna.
I think we have Robert's screen up now.
Okay.
Thank you, Monona, and all of the readers who have read today. These have been such incredible stories, and it's so nice to get a peek into the other classes. So I'm going to be introducing 6 writers today from 3 different classes. Our first writer is Phyllis Rothman, and she is a retired science teacher who brings her knack for precision to her creative writing. She has this type of poem that she calls an if poem, an anaphora poem, where every line begins with the word if, and that is famous in our Saturday autobiography class. The following 2 poems that she will read today demonstrate her careful adherence to specific syllables and word counts, through which she manages to convey so much with so little. So this first piece, I'm going to screen share. And Phyllis, take it away.
Six-word autobiography by Phyllis Rothman. Ancestry. I'm here because they came here. Women. Eva, Anna, Mimi, me, Cindy, Sophia. Worship. Irving, Mimi, me, Wayne, Michael, family. Smolin. Mike and me, Cindy, Danny, family. Rothman. Joel found me, I found love. Oh, they're showing you instead of me. Retirement. Go to bed late, arise whenever. Tardiness. I'm late. Oh well, I'm here. Phyllis. I'm writing my autobiography. Read me. Anna, they're showing you instead of me on the screen. Did you know that?
I thought that are we not looking at your piece, the text?
Yeah, but next to there is a
She's the one
picture.
reading it. We need to
We can see you and we can see you in the piece, Phyllis.
Phyllis, I can see you and I can see the piece.
Oh, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
I just can't see me. That's fine. Okay.
You look great.
For him. Okay. For him. He is back. Every breath a gift. I love him. He is tall. He is good looking. He is mine. Here we are. Chair yoga is our sport. Take a breath. We're learning, we're laughing a lot. We're in class. He is smart. He's organized, gets things done. We hold hands every Friday night. We're in shul. I'm home. Music to my ears. I feel safe. I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. So he does. He's funny. I always laugh, even now. Care for me? Every day I know we are one. We dated many years ago, then were wed. 40 years together are we. He loves me. He's asleep, every breath a gift. I love him.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next, we have Shifra Wilder, who is also a visual artist. And as you'll see in this piece, she brings her painterly vision to the page. This piece is called Baking Brownies, and it'll make you hungry, but it will also move you with all of the love that's simmering just beneath the surface.
Thank you. My earliest memories of cooking were baking brownies with my mother. I intentionally watched my mother assemble what she needed, the turquoise blue GE electric hand mixer with the red button on top, the milk glass mixing bowl, a wooden spoon, a Pyrex rectangular glass baking pan, a stick of butter, and an egg. She carefully gathered the ingredients, read the instructions, preheated the top section of our built-in brown caloric ultramatic oven, and was ready to venture into the brownie making journey. She poured the brownie mix from the box into the bowl on the counter, cautiously cracked the egg into the middle of the mix, then methodically measured and poured water into the bowl. I remember standing on the chair by the kitchen sink, intermittently looking out the window, watching the birds on a tree limb, and back to watching my mother. I heard the whir of the hand blender, mixing the egg and water into a silky smooth batter of goodness. I loved the turquoise color of the blender and wanted to press the red button on top. I asked to use the hand blender, but was told no. Apparently, it was too powerful a tool for a little girl around the age of 4 or 5. I was too young. As I look back, I'm actually surprised my mother permitted me to stand on the chair. She was always exceedingly fearful I would fall or get hurt in some way. I was, however, allowed to grease the Pyrex glass baking pan with a stick of butter. I covered the entire baking pan with a thin layer of butter from top to bottom, making sure I did not miss the corners or sides of the pan. After she finished blending the mix, I watched my mother pour smooth, lump-free brownie batter into the buttered baking pan, starting from the top and equally pouring the batter all the way to the bottom. I liked tilting and lowering my head down to watch the batter through the sides of the glass fill up the pan halfway. Next, she smoothed out the batter from side to side with a wooden spoon so it was evenly distributed into the glass pan. Now for the very best part about making brownies. My mother cautiously handed me the blender blades, wooden spoon, and bowl to lick the remains of the brownie batter. As I started to lick the batter, she said, "Now be careful, licking those blender blades. You don't want to cut your tongue." The thought of cutting my tongue on dull blender blades never even occurred to me. Oh, what joy. The taste of smooth, sugary chocolate brownie sweetness. I carefully licked every last bit of the blades and scooped all the batter from the bowl while using my fingers to get every last drop. Then I licked the wooden spoon until there was not a single speck of brownie batter left. It was time to transfer the brownies to the oven. I climbed down from the chair as I heard my mother say, "Careful, don't fall." I walked over with her and stood in front of the oven as she said, "Watch out, don't get too close, the oven is hot." I could feel a wave of heat as she opened the oven door. I quickly moved and stood in place behind her, peering at the oven from around her right side. As she closed the door, I stepped closer to the oven, stood on my tippy toes, and looked through the silver metal framed rectangular glass window to see the brownies placed securely on the middle rack. Now we had to wait. While we waited, it was time to clean up. I hopped back up on the chair and looked out the window. I noticed the birds were still on the tree limb as I had last seen them, although now the birds were on different limbs, and one more bird, a blue jay, had joined in chirping and singing with the others. I loved watching those birds. In my little world, those birds were my friends. Mother started washing the dishes. While standing on the chair, I was only allowed to rinse the soapy dishes and put them back on the dish rack. As we were cleaning up, the oven timer went off. The buzzing sound gave me that dopamine pleasure rush I'd been waiting for. I yelled, "The brownies are done!" My mother put on her oven mitts and removed the piping hot baking dish from the oven. The baked brownie smell was heavenly. My mouth was watering. I couldn't wait to sink my teeth in, taste the warm, sweet brownie and feel it melt in my mouth. But first, the toothpick test. My mother stuck the toothpick in different parts of the pan of the brownies. As she explained, if the toothpick comes out without any little traces of brownies stuck to the toothpick, this means the brownies are done baking. I silently prayed there would be no brownie traces. At last, the brownies were done. Well, almost done. Now we had to wait until they cooled down enough to cut them. This whole ordeal seemed to be taking a very long time. I was told to go out and play and come back in a few minutes. A few minutes? How long was a few minutes? How long could I play for, and what did I want to play? All I could think about were the brownies. I went outside, ran around the backyard, and watched the birds again. I wondered if the brownies knew how long a few minutes were. Before I knew it, my mother called for me to come back in the house. I ran around to the front of the house, swung the door open, ran past the living and dining rooms, and as I was about to enter the kitchen, I heard her yell, "Careful, no running in the house." I watched as she slid the knife down the middle of the glass pan she'd set on dish towel on our silver-edged Formica kitchen table. She explained how brownies had to be cut equally into squares. I always enjoyed watching this part, those beautiful, equally cut brown squares. I think this may have been the beginning of my perfectionist trait. The anticipation was almost too much. At the end of the table, eagerly waiting, I shifted my weight from side to side in a little happy dance. Mother knew I liked the inner moisture pieces of the brownie much better than the crusty outside ones. I watched how she carefully cut the inside brownie square, slid it out of the glass pan using a thin metal spatula, placed the perfect little brownie square onto a plate, and lovingly handed it to me. All I cared about was shoving that glorious brownie into my mouth. As I picked up the brownie up to my lips, was about to slide it into my open mouth and taste that incredible sweet brownie I'd be yearning for, my mother said, "Careful, honey, it still may be hot."
Thank you, Shifra. I love that last line. It does so much work. So next we have Fred Odom, who tends to write poems that look like sculptures. His typographical experimentation recalls E.E. Cummings, yet the content and themes in his work are all his own.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Here we go. First of all, I wanted to congratulate everyone that's been reading today. It's indeed an honor to be included in this august group, and especially thanks to Anna, who's an amazingly wonderful instructor and professor. So thank you. My poem is called Winter's Demise. Most of us think of spring coming as a joyful, pleasant experience. Those are the people that were not raised in the Midwest. So I will start my poem. Winter's Demise. Winter is aging, waning in strength. One sees in her gray hair, sees in her spindly fingers, stranglehold on life. Sees in her face, she hides from coming spring her last breath of Arctic blow. Superseded by March, emerging with vengeance, cascading down mountain slopes and across plains, shoving, crackling, piling up, ice of mighty rivers still frozen, shards of its breath piling into shore in the headwaters of the Missouri, Mississippi, and Ohio east. The beguiling Matahari kiss, intending to flood all of their downward path to the Gulf. Complicit in spring's gentle warmth, destruction, spring flowers but refugees after the watery Holocaust. Spring has arrived. Thank you.
Perfect poem for this time of year. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Linda Zaru is also a visual artist whose work has been shown at the Emeritus Art Gallery. I believe there might be a couple photographs up there now in the photography exhibit. Her writing is bold and unflinching, tender and often funny. Her piece, Failing and Flying, takes its title from a Jack Gilbert poem of the same name, a poem that reminds us that while Icarus may have ultimately fell to earth, there was also a time when he flew. Linda, make sure to unmute yourself. I don't know if you're reading. Linda?
Sorry, I was fighting with it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was, oh, darn it. Hang on a minute. Oh, it's not working.
You can read it off the screen.
No, I can't, but okay, here goes. I just had mentioned that this was in a response to write about something you are glad to have tried, whether or not it succeeded. That's what this response is about. I was a fat girl in high school, awkward, bookish, shy, braces, eyeglasses, dumb hair. But by the time I left for college, I had lost weight. My braces and glasses were gone, and I had beautiful long blonde hair that I insisted be cut exactly like Farrah Fawcett's. More significant, I had a revelation. I realized I could basically start my life over. No one knew me at college. No one knew I used to be fat or shy or awkward. I could be anyone. So I decided to be cool. Early on, I met a bad boy. He was dark and wiry. He was smart but moody, sexy and slightly dangerous. He smoked pot. I didn't. But we both loved to dance, and there are way too many yearbook photos of us rocking out. He drank. I didn't. And many date nights, I would have to summon his friends to carry his unconscious, drunken body covertly up to his dorm. No one ever made my heart quiver like that before or since. It was the best of times and the worst of times. I wouldn't sleep with him, so he started dating the campus tramp. I was heartbroken, but I still played it cool. During that time, a sweet, level-headed, tall, blonde, blue-eyed graduate student from the South asked me to marry him. As dear as he was, my heart only beats for bad boys. Eventually, we got back together. I actually proposed to him and promised to put him through law school if we got married. Who could turn down that offer? Less than a month after graduation, we were married in my hometown of Seattle in a huge traditional fairy tale wedding with bridesmaids and tuxedos, flower bouquets, and all of my dad's rich friends in attendance. We were poor, but happy. We lived in a rundown apartment on Alvarado Street in Los Angeles. I remember the homeless searching through our garbage every morning, and my mom becoming distressed when I had them over for dinner one night. I don't think they appreciated our unique dining experience, which consisted of sitting on pillows on the floor while eating off a giant industrial spool I had liberated from the trash. I was so proud of my interior design skills, but I heard my mom growl at my dad as they walked out the door. Are you going to give those kids some money or not? He finished law school, and we eventually lived in a beautiful Pasadena home on an acre of land. We built our own black bottom pool, and we had a beautiful baby boy. Soon after that, he left us, but I never blamed him. I'm a hard person to live with, and he was not strong enough to survive. Eventually, we ended up marrying someone else. I never regretted the time I had with him. We had great moments and I have fond memories. While he no longer makes my heart quiver, I still love him. We are friendly now and often run into each other at family Thanksgivings and grandkid birthday parties. He was the love of my life. And as Gilbert writes, anything worth doing is worth doing badly.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
I love that piece. So next, every writer, I think everyone here probably would agree with this, has been advised at some point to show and not tell in their writing. Our next reader is a shining example of that principle. Notice how little she tells us in her piece. I'm sorry, what is the name of it? I'm sorry, I lost the name of the piece. But notice how much she shows us in her piece with telling us very little, and yet what she shows us speaks volumes. I am talking about Marcy Wingard.
Wow, thank you for that lovely introduction. Okay. After her death, Chicago, 1998. In my childhood home, I gaze out the front window, pull aside the musty draperies printed with images from Salvador Dali's paintings, see a now tall maple tree planted after I left, a black sculpture on the white cork table, figure of a reclining nude woman. One of her favorite art pieces has lain there for 30 years. I contemplate the Danish ceramic tile hanging by the window in the hall. Two women hanging fresh caught herring on a rack for smoking. From the dining room sideboard, take out a stack of soft green placemats, edges embroidered in dark green, by Grandma Yeva many years ago. In her bedroom on the side table, next to a warm, slip-covered easy chair, a hammered silver thimble lies, as if she were just about to use it. An ancient, tattered book of poetry, a child's book of Western verse, written by Eugene Field, dated 1923. I can almost hear her reading. A rhinestone bracelet in her dresser drawer, a birthday gift from me when I was 10, which she never wore but kept for 40 years. Her fine jewelry already passed on. I remember Marshall Fields at Christmas, steaming hot chocolate in the walnut room. I wore a hat with a lavender ribbon. She wore a white beaver coat.
Thank you, Marcy. Such an immersive piece with all those details. So our final reader, last but certainly not least, is Rosemary McCarty. She is a multi-talented writer and actress whose vivid imagination has delighted us in the Saturday afternoon autobiography class all through the pandemic. Her piece, Little Birds, Fly Away Home, is about, among other things, the imagination's ability to help us heal.
Rosemary, make sure you unmute, please.
Little birds, fly away home. We were desperate. Al, my husband, had gone out onto our patio deck and found our little hummingbirds, Twitterdactyl and Flitterdactyl, had flown the nest. And what's more, there was an enormous blue jay sitting on the lattice fence about 10 feet away from the empty nest, and it was looking very satisfied. I might just point out here that blue jays are known for robbing the nests of baby hummingbirds. Yes, we were aware that the twins were getting ready to abandon their nest, but surely not so soon. Al rushed to the fence to swat the bird away. I rushed from the house onto the tiled walkway outside, tears pouring down my face. I looked up desperately for any signs of the little birds in the black acacia tree by the front door. I saw the blue flash of the predator's wings as he flew up into the air. And then lo, as my eyes searched in vain, I heard a flurry of supersonic speed flapping wings. I looked up and there he was, Flitodactyl, flying saucily by only a few feet from my nose. He was buzzing me. He flew on over the fence and onto our patio. I yelled to my husband, hey, they didn't die. They must have just taken flight right when the blue jay was coming in for the attack. I rushed in through the front door and out onto the patio. Flitodactyl had taken up a position on the lattice fence in almost exactly the same place the blue jay had occupied so recently. He was looking awfully smart. A few minutes later, oh joy, his twin sister Twitterdactyl, no relation to the social media giant, flew in and took up her rightful position next to her brother. She too was looking pleased with herself. They sat together on the fence and sang tweety tweet, tweety tweet tweet, all right, all's right with the world. 6 months later, in December of 2019, 3 days after his 80th birthday, my beloved owl died suddenly. He'd been ill with an infection that wouldn't be healed, but we expected antibiotics would keep him alive. Alas, that was not to be. I stood for days gazing out my kitchen window. After a while, I became aware that the little hummingbird twin Flitodactyl seemed to be always sitting on a twig, just a few yards away from me. I began to find him there every day for hours, just staring in at me. Sometimes when I appeared at the window, out of the blue, I sensed my husband had not gone away, but had somehow transmuted into the little bird, and that he wanted me to know that he was safeguarding me, was still with me. This comforted me a great deal. Now it's 10 months later. Flitodactyl still comes to sip at the feeder every day, but not for long. I believe it is my husband who has flown away. That's it.
We also have this very short poem, Rosemary, up on the screen.
Home, sweet home. To die in the afternoon, the golden sun slanting across the bed. Your phone untouched beside you, not close, not clutched. Your book laid down casually. Oh, yours was the blessed death. Your mouth open, your eyes gleaming. Still there, my love? No.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Oh, thank you, Rosemary. Great.
Oh, Birgit. Thank you, Anna.
You're wonderful. Thank you. Thank you
You
for
can talk,
inviting me.
my friends.
Yeah,
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Anna, for being such a teacher.
So I'll hand it back over to Monona now, but thank you to all the readers. And this was just such a beautiful collection, a bouquet really of pieces, and I'm so glad to have heard it.
Thank you for all the
Good job, Mom.
Thank you,
Monona, you're muted.
for all your pieces.
Monona, you're on mute.
I thought I had taken care of that. Thank you so much to all the readers, wonderful readers. Wow, it's so moving. It's so different to hear these pieces read out loud and to hear them in your voices. It's just so moving, so fun. As I said at the beginning, the diversity is just really stunning. And I hope you're all reading comments in the chat from the audience. We had 71 people here, which is just so great. And just a big thank you again, Anna, Rob, all the readers, contributors, Scott, thank you so much for organizing all this and making it happen for us. This has been great. And yeah, Just wonderful. Thank you. Please
Thank
please
you all.
get a copy of the journal and support the college. It's a great way to support the college. It's $10. And do you want to say anything more about that, Scott? Ordering?
Absolutely. Thanks, Winona, Rob, Anna, and all of you for contributing to the class, as well as the writers and audience. If you do choose to buy a journal, the copy of the Emeritus Chronicles, you can buy it on the same website where you found the link to this meeting. You'll find the link there. We're going to post the recording of this event there as well. We go into the office once every month or so to do shipments, so I will probably go in about 2 weeks and do our first shipment. I know the first round of shipments for the ongoing moment, some people had some delivery issues. We're doing the best we can with the post office being what it is, but if you put an order in, I promise we will send it to you, and we'll send it to you until you get it right. So we'll work on those orders and get those shipped out to you as soon as we get those in. And I look forward to seeing all of you eventually back in Emeritus. And of course, in the meantime, we have plenty of Zoom events coming up soon. Our gallery and everything else will be happening in April. And just find all of our events online. We'll do another email out to students probably soon with upcoming events.
Can I
Thank you all
just
so
say
much.
thank you all for giving this opportunity to share our work with others. I really appreciate that too.
Oh, glad to do it. Really great job, everyone. Fantastic job.
Oh, he froze.
Nice, really. Bye, Pip. Bye, Cal. Bye, Birgit.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sybil.
Bye, Ro. Great to see you. Terrific reading.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
It was so enjoyable.
This was wonderful.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yes.
Thanks. It was wonderful to hear all the voices and hear the stories all the way over here in the East Coast.
Hi,
Thanks, Rose.
Nita. Big kiss.
Loved it.
Great.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah, it was a
A
pleasure.
pleasure.
Hi, Linda Hernandez. Are you okay today? Her husband's very sick.